My mom stole the apartment my aunt secretly bought for me and gave it to my golden child, brother. But at Thanksgiving, I left them speechless with one cold and ruthless move. I'm Jason, 27 years old, and Thanksgiving 2020. 3 was supposed to be the first normal family gathering in years. That's what I told myself anyway. As I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of a shirt I hadn't worn since college graduation, it still fit somehow. I hadn't seen most of my extended family in over a year, not since my uncle's retirement party, where my mom, Diane, got embarrassingly drunk and tried to convince everyone I was some hot-shot financial advisor in New York. For the record, I wasn't. I was still in town, living in a shoebox of a rental and juggling 2 jobs just to stay afloat after getting laid off. The only reason I was going to this dinner was because Aunt Valerie, Mom's older sister, personally called and insisted I come, and when Aunt Val asks you for something, you don't say no. She was the only one in the family who never talked down to me, who actually remembered my birthday without Facebook reminders, and who once told me quietly during my cousin's wedding, "You were never the failure. You were just outnumbered." So I showed up. I parked my beat-up Honda 2 blocks away so nobody would see it sputter. I fixed my hair in the reflection of someone's SUV window and walked into the house like I belonged there. The place was huge, bigger than I remembered. Aunt Val's home was always warm and classy, the kind of place where the fireplace is real and people drink wine out of tall glasses without stems. The air smelled like rosemary, turkey, and something else I couldn't place at first. I didn't see my mom right away, which was a relief. I wasn't ready for her usual comments about how tired I looked or how I should smile more. Instead, I was greeted by my cousin Amanda, who was too preoccupied taking selfies with her boyfriend to notice me, and then by my Uncle Greg, who gave me a stiff nod like we were business partners instead of family. The dinner table was enormous, decked out with gold-rimmed plates and enough food to feed a small village. I found a seat near the end, tucked between a chair reserved for the kids and a crystal bowl full of cranberry sauce nobody would touch. I was reaching for a roll when I heard Aunt Val's voice cut through the conversation like a knife through butter. "So, Jason," she said, setting down her wine glass with a gentle clink. "How's the apartment I bought you last year?" The room stilled. I froze, my hand still hovering over the breadbasket. I turned toward her, blinking like she'd just spoken in a foreign language. "What apartment?" I asked, not even trying to mask the confusion in my voice. Her smile faltered for just a second, just one beat, but that was all it took for the air to shift. Her gaze flicked to my mother, who was sitting across from her, cheeks already red from wine. Mom's hand jerked, and her glass tilted a little too fast. Merlot spilled down the front of her blouse. She cursed under her breath and grabbed a napkin, dabbing furiously, eyes fixed on the table. "Diane," Aunt Val said, her voice suddenly colder. Mom didn't answer at first. She just shook her head and muttered something about clumsy hands. But then Aunt Val leaned forward slightly and said, louder this time, "You never told him, did you?" That's when the silence broke, just not in the way I expected. Grandma coughed. Amanda giggled. But it was the nervous kind. The way someone laughs in a horror movie right before the lights go out. My stomach sank. I slowly put down the roll and sat back, arms crossed. "Told me what?" I asked, looking directly at my mother. She stared at the napkin like it held the answers to a test she never studied for. "That was supposed to be private," she mumbled, still not meeting anyone's gaze. "A family matter." "Aunt Val bought me an apartment?" I asked again, louder this time. Valerie nodded slowly. "Yes. I bought it for you last fall after you lost your job. I wired the down payment directly, even covered a year's HOA fees in advance. Diane said you'd moved in." It felt like my lungs forgot how to work. My face must have gone pale because Amanda finally looked up from her phone. Uncle Greg muttered something under his breath. I stared at my mom, waiting, needing her to say it wasn't true, that it was some mistake, a mix-up. Instead, she slammed the napkin down and snapped, "Do you have any idea how ungrateful you sound right now?" "What?" I asked, my voice cracking from the shock. "You took an apartment that was meant for me and never told me. You think life's that simple," she hissed. "You don't just get handouts, Jason. You needed to learn responsibility, to stand on your own 2 feet. I blinked. "So, your solution was to what? Lie to your own sister? Steal from me?" Her face hardened. "We used the money for your brother." Of course. Of course. It was about Evan, my younger brother, the golden child, the one who crashed his 3rd car this year and somehow still had his tuition covered, the one who hadn't worked a single day in his life but got a new MacBook every Christmas. My jaw tightened. "What do you mean, use the money?" I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling I knew. My mom waved her hand like she was brushing away a fly. Evan was going through a hard time. He needed help getting back on his feet. He deserved a safe place to live, too. You gave him my apartment, I said flatly. It wasn't yours yet, she snapped. The room was dead quiet now. All eyes were on us. Aunt Val sat frozen, her wine forgotten. I could hear someone's fork clinking against a plate at the far end of the table, then stopping. Nobody spoke. And what? You were just going to keep lying about it? I asked, voice low but sharp. Pretend it never happened? My mom leaned back in her chair, folding her arms like a teenager caught in a lie. You wouldn't have appreciated it. You waste opportunities. I wanted to scream. Instead, I turned to Aunt Val. Can you tell me where this apartment is? She blinked, then stood up slowly. Yes, I have the paperwork. I never heard from you after the wire transfer, but I trusted your mother when she said you were settled. My mom let out a sharp laugh, but it was hollow. This is ridiculous. We're airing this out over turkey and potatoes? No, I said, standing. You aired it out when you lied. For over a year. My hands were shaking, but I kept them clenched at my sides. Aunt Val looked livid. My mom was seething. My brother Evan wasn't even at the table. He was upstairs, no doubt, playing games or streaming something on the giant TV he probably bought with money scraped from the life I should have had. I want to see the place, I said quietly. Tonight. My mom opened her mouth to argue, but Aunt Val cut her off. I'll drive you. Mom's chair scraped back suddenly as she stood. You're not taking him there. Valerie didn't even flinch. You don't get to stop me. I'm his mother. You stopped acting like his mother when you stole from him. I didn't know what stunned me more, Aunt Val's words or the way Mom visibly recoiled, like she'd been slapped. The entire room was holding its breath. And that's when the yelling started. It wasn't me. It wasn't even Aunt Val. It came from the stairs. You promised they'd never find out. It was Evan. His voice was panicked, scrambling, guilty. I turned slowly and locked eyes with my brother at the top of the stairs. His face pale, jaw slack, like a boy caught breaking into the cookie jar but finding himself on national television instead. And that's when it all began to unravel. Evan stood frozen on the stairs, his hand gripping the railing like it was the only thing keeping him from collapsing. His usual smug confidence, the look he wore every holiday while making backhanded comments about my job, my car, or my haircut, was gone. Now he looked like a man staring down the barrel of a truth he couldn't dodge. You promised, Mom, he repeated, quieter this time, his voice shaking. Aunt Val turned to him, her eyes narrow and sharp. Promised what, Evan? My mom's mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked between him and me like a cornered animal, like she might bolt from the room. I saw it for the first time, not just guilt, but fear. I didn't know what else to do, she said finally, her voice trembling. You have to understand, he was in trouble, serious trouble. Aunt Val's voice was cold. What kind of trouble? Evan took a shaky breath. Debt. That one word hit the room like a thunderclap. I stepped forward. What do you mean, debt? You told me last year you got a bonus and were looking at apartments downtown. That was before things got bad, he muttered, eyes on the floor. I got into this crypto thing. Some guys convinced me it was a guaranteed flip. I pulled some money from Mom's account, just short term, but then it crashed, and I couldn't cover it. My heart pounded in my chest. So, she stole the apartment meant for me to cover your crypto debt? My mom flinched. It wasn't just that. Then what else? I demanded. She said it was an investment. Evan jumped in. That the conjugate place would be in her name for a year or two, and then she'd transfer it to me. To you? I barked. I didn't know it was originally meant for you, he said quickly, holding up his hands. She told me Aunt Val gave it to her to use however she wanted. That's not true, Val snapped. I told her specifically, explicitly. It was a gift to help Jason land on his feet. Not her, not you. My mom finally stood up, knocking over her chair in the process. Her voice was high and desperate. Do you have any idea what it's like to watch your youngest child fall apart in front of you, to see him scared and ashamed and know you're the only one who can help? You were supposed to be helping me, I said, my voice low and bitter. You knew I was drowning. You knew I was behind on rent. And you let me stay in that dump while you handed my apartment to Evan and lied about it for an entire year. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. Her silence said it all. You lied to Aunt Val, I added. To your own sister. I had to, Jason, she said, tears in her eyes now. If she found out Evan was gambling with money he didn't have, it would have destroyed him. She always favored you anyway. I had to do what was best for my son. I stared at her in stunned silence. I am your son, I said, my voice shaking. You were fine, she said quickly. You've always been so independent. You figure things out. I knew you'd survive. No, I said slowly. You knew I wouldn't make a scene, that I wouldn't ask questions, that I'd swallow it all and just keep going. That's why you picked me. The table was still full, but no one was eating. Someone's fork slipped to the floor with a soft clang. Grandma was watching with wide eyes, her lips pressed tightly together. Amanda had stopped filming and looked genuinely horrified. Uncle Greg looked like he wanted to disappear into his wine glass. Aunt Val took a long, controlled breath. You forged my name on documents, didn't you? My mom didn't respond. I'm not stupid, Diane, Val continued. I wired the money to a closing company, not to you. You must have intercepted it, redirected the paperwork. That's the only way Jason wouldn't have heard a word from anyone. Evan's face turned gray. Wait, you forged legal documents? Don't act like you didn't benefit from it, I snapped. You knew something was off and you didn't care. Aunt Val pulled out her phone. I want the address, now. I'm calling my lawyer. Please, Val, Mom whispered. It was never supposed to go this far. Oh, it's going a lot farther, Val said. You messed with the wrong person's name, Diane. I kept my mouth shut for years when you insulted me behind my back and made passive comments about my career. But not this. You stole from your own child and dragged my name into it. The sound of Evan's footsteps retreating upstairs echoed through the house. I didn't follow him. I was done chasing ghosts. Jason, Aunt Val said gently, I'll make this right. I nodded, but I wasn't sure what right even looked like anymore. The anger in my chest was burning so hot I felt numb. I kept thinking about all the nights I spent working late, scraping for groceries, walking home because I couldn't afford gas. And all that time, there was a warm, safe place waiting for me that I never even knew existed. And now I had 1,000 questions, and no one I could trust to answer them. Not without more lies. That's when my mom finally looked up at me, her eyes bloodshot and pleading. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said quietly. You didn't mean for me to find out, I replied. And I turned to Aunt Val and said, let's go, I want to see it. Without a word, she grabbed her coat and her purse, her heels clicking across the hardwood. I didn't look back as we walked out the door, but just before I stepped outside, I heard my mom's voice, barely above a whisper, say, something I'll never forget. If he takes that apartment, Evan's life will fall apart. And I didn't even hesitate before replying, then he'll finally know how it feels. The front door shut behind us, cutting off whatever sound came next. And that was just the beginning. Aunt Val's car was quiet as we pulled away from the house, the driveway shrinking. In the rearview mirror, like a fading memory I didn't want to revisit anytime soon. The heater hummed low, and neither of us spoke for a while. I stared out the window, watching the neat rows of houses blur past, lights twinkling behind curtains, families gathered around tables. Thanksgiving. For most people, it meant warmth, gratitude, second helpings, and sleepy comfort. For me, it had just become the night everything I thought I knew about my family shattered. Jason, Aunt Val finally said, her voice soft but firm. I'm sorry, I had no idea. I nodded, but I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to rage, to ask how she could have missed the signs. But the truth was, she'd been lied to, just like I had. Mom had manipulated both of us. And for what? To keep Evan comfortable, to keep the fantasy of his innocence alive. I believed her when she said you were settling in and didn't want to make a big fuss about it, Val continued. She even told me you didn't want her to tell me where it was because you were embarrassed. I gave a short, bitter laugh. That sounds like her. She always knew how to spin a story. She muttered, Val said, hands tightening on the steering wheel. When we were kids, she could talk her way out of anything. But this, she shook her head, this is a different level. We turned onto a quieter street, older buildings lining the sidewalk. There was a certain charm to the area, tall trees arching over the road, their bare branches lit by scattered street lamps. A dog barked in the distance. A couple walked hand in hand, bundled up in scarves. Here, she said, slowing to a stop in front of a 3-story brick building. It looked clean, well kept. The kind of place where people nodded politely to their neighbors and left shoes outside their doors. A small metal placard above the buzzer read Willow Court. You're kidding, I muttered. This is it, she nodded. 3rd floor corner unit. It gets afternoon sun. I toured it myself before wiring the payment. It was supposed to be a fresh start for you. We sat in silence, staring up at the dark windows. I wondered which one Evan had claimed as his own, which room had my name on it before it was scrubbed from the plan. "Do you want to go up?" she asked gently. I hesitated. Part of me did, desperately, but another part, the hurt, exhausted part, wasn't ready to see it yet. I didn't want to step into a life I was never allowed to have. Not tonight, I said quietly, not while he's still living there. She nodded. "That's fair, I'll get the keys." We pulled away, and as we drove back to her place, she filled me in on the details I'd missed, the emails, the transfer forms, the confirmation letters that Mom must have intercepted or redirected. It all painted a clearer picture. My mother hadn't just lied, she'd engineered the entire thing carefully, deliberately, every lie, stacked on top of the last, woven into a believable narrative she could sell to both sides. And the more I heard, the more I realized just how deep it all went. "She signed your name on the mortgage addendum," Aunt Val said, pulling into her driveway. "There's no mistaking it." And she added Evan as an occupant. I felt my stomach turn. "Is that legal?" She parked the car and turned to face me. "Not without your consent." "No, especially not if I specified the gift was for you." The implication hung in the air. There were consequences to what Mom had done, real ones. And suddenly the path forward was clear. There were documents to gather, lawyers to call, and choices to be made. I could take this to court. I could expose every lie, every signature, every stolen word. But more than that, I could take back what was mine. Later that night, as I lay on the pull-out couch in Aunt Val's guest room, I stared at the ceiling, thoughts spinning like wheels in mud. I replayed everything. Mom's justifications, Evan's panic, the way my name was erased from my own future without a second thought. I kept thinking about the apartment, about what it would have meant to walk into a place and know it was mine, to hang my coat on. A hook I installed, to sleep in a bed that didn't creak every time I turned over, to invite people over without feeling ashamed. I thought about Evan living there right now, probably texting someone about the family drama like it was a soap opera. Did he even understand what he'd taken from me? Probably not. He never had to. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and fresh cinnamon rolls. Aunt Val was already at the table, papers spread out around her like a war map. "Morning," she said, handing me a mug. "Hope you're ready. We've got work to do." I rubbed my eyes and sat down. "You're serious about this?" Her eyes didn't waver. "Your mother made a mistake, and she's going to face the consequences. But more importantly, you're going to reclaim what was meant for you." There was something fierce in her voice, steely, like she'd been waiting for an excuse to stop tolerating Diane's games. And now she had one. We went through everything. Emails she'd forwarded to my mom, transfer receipts, property tax statements. There it was, in black and white, my name removed. My mother's signature where mine should have been. Evan's name slipped in like a quiet thief in the night. But as we pieced it all together, something else began to surface. A pattern. Other inconsistencies. Other accounts where things didn't quite add up. And that's when Aunt Val paused, scanning one of the bank statements she'd printed. "Jason, did you know your grandmother left you a savings bond in her will?" My heart skipped. "No, I didn't even know she had a will." "She did," she said, frowning. "And she left something to both you and Evan. Equal amounts. But according to the records, only Evan's was cashed." I stared at her. "What?" Val's eyes narrowed. "It was supposed to mature last year, and it was tied to your social security number, but someone claimed it." My blood ran cold. "You think my mom forged that too?" She didn't answer because she didn't have to. And in that moment, I realized the apartment was just the beginning. I wish I could say I was surprised, but I wasn't. Not anymore. By the time Aunt Val uncovered the stolen savings bond, I'd crossed some invisible line. The old version of me, the one who gave the benefit of the doubt, who let things slide, to keep the peace, was gone, replaced by someone who'd finally woken up to the truth. I'd spent most of my life playing the quiet son, the forgiving brother, the invisible man in my own family story, and my mother had written me out of the plot with a smile on her face. Over the next week, I stayed at Aunt Val's house while we gathered. Every document, every receipt, every shred of proof we could find. She had a good lawyer, one of her oldest friends, someone she'd once mentored when he was fresh out of law school. His name was Henry, and he didn't waste time sugarcoating anything. "She committed fraud," he said flatly, after reviewing the documents. "Forgery, misappropriation of funds, identity misuse. Depending on how far you want to push this, Jason, she could be looking at real consequences. Real consequences." The words rang in my ears for days. I didn't want to destroy her. I didn't want to destroy anyone. But I also couldn't keep pretending that what she did could be brushed under the rug, that It was just a family matter to be solved over a casserole and some awkward apologies. She stole from me. She stole my home. She stole the one financial gift ever given to me and handed it to my brother like it was hers to redistribute. So I gave Henry the green light. He filed a cease and desist first, addressed to both my mother and Evan, ordering them to vacate the apartment within 30 days. Included was the original deed transfer Aunt Val had prepared in my name along with notarized evidence that her funds were earmarked specifically for me. Henry had also requested a formal audit of the savings bond transaction. The paper trail showed my mother had used my social security number to claim it under a forged signature, depositing the amount, just over $15,000, into her personal account before immediately transferring half to Evan and using the rest to upgrade his vehicle. We sent a separate notice to the bank. It didn't take long before the house of cards began to collapse. The first call came from my mother. I didn't answer. She tried again, then again, texted, left voicemails, each one more frantic than the last. It went from, "We need to talk," to, "You're blowing this out of proportion," to, "How could you do this to your own mother?" Then came Evan. His messages weren't apologetic, they were furious. "What is wrong with you, man? You're ruining my life over an apartment you didn't even know existed. I didn't ask her to do that. Don't take it out on me. You're just jealous that someone finally treated me like I mattered." That one stung more than I expected, and it brought back a wave of memories, birthdays forgotten, praise withheld, moments when I watched my mom beam at Evan like he was the second coming while I sat in the background, waiting for my turn. It never came. I stopped expecting it. The day Henry served them in person was the day everything changed. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. But Aunt Val called me afterward, her voice tight with barely contained anger. She cried, she said she didn't mean to hurt you, that it was all for Evan's future. But when I asked about the bond, she clammed up. Evan tried to defend her, but he didn't even know what she'd done until today. "Doesn't matter," I said. "They both benefited. They can both move out." 30 days passed, and I got the keys. The apartment was empty when I walked in, stripped of furniture, of personality, of any trace that Evan had lived there. There were some scuff marks on the walls, a faint outline where a couch had once rested, and a weird smell I couldn't quite place. Something between too much cologne and desperation, but it was mine. I stood in the doorway for a long time, letting the silence wrap around me like a second skin. No shouting, no tension, no guilt hanging in the air, just a space that had waited quietly, patiently, for its rightful owner to arrive. Aunt Val helped me furnish it. Nothing extravagant, just clean, simple pieces, a couch that didn't sink when. I sat on it, a real bed, a small dining table where I could eat without balancing a plate on my lap. She even brought me a plant. "You're an adult now," she said with a smile. "You need something to neglect." I laughed. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel forced. I didn't hear from my mother for a while after that. I knew the silence was temporary. I braced for it. When she finally showed up, it wasn't at my door. It was at Aunt Val's, uninvited. I was there helping Val reorganize her garage when I heard the knock. When I opened the door and saw her standing there, pale and small against the backdrop of a sunny afternoon, my stomach clenched. "Jason," she said softly, "please, can we talk?" I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "I just want to understand," she said. "Why you did this, why I did this," I repeated. "Mom, you stole from me. You lied. For over a year you took what wasn't yours and gave it away like it was a toy you could rewrap for someone else. I didn't think you needed it as much as he did," she said. "You've always been the strong one." "No," I said. "I was just quiet." "That's not the same thing." She looked down, her hands shaking. "I lost you," she whispered. "No," I said. "You threw me away. You just didn't expect me to come back and pick myself up." She tried to hug me. I stepped back. "I'm not doing this for revenge," I said. "I'm doing this because I deserve better and because maybe if I finally stand up for myself, you'll think twice before doing this to someone else." She didn't reply, just nodded and walked away. I haven't seen her since. Evan texted me once after that. Just 2 words, "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I moved into the apartment the following weekend. Aunt Val came over with a bottle of sparkling cider, and we toasted on the small balcony while the sun dipped below the horizon. "To new beginnings," she said. "To finally being seen," I replied. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a background character in my own life. I felt like the main character,